will understand how a company can link the process orientation with the organizational structure. In fact, the assumption of a process orientation is that companies create value through the process, with the organizational units contributing to the value creation just indirectly, by providing resources and competencies along the process when needed. In other words, we can say that the organizational units have as primary goal the realization of some specific functions through implementation of jobs and tasks, which are grouped according to the similarity among them. The processes, instead, have as main objective the realization of the final output for a specific final client, grouping together activities according to the flow of information and resources that they generate. These considerations lead us to the question: what is the role of the organizational structure in facilitating the integration between organizational units and the process orientation? To answer, we can refer to two main options. First, the adoption of a horizontal organizational structure, which is process-based. Second, we can consider the processes as a dimension in addition to existing organizational dimensions, adopting a matrix structure. Let's start with the horizontal organization. In a horizontal organization, we use the process-oriented grouping criterion to group the activities and the positions at the top level of the organization. Thus, activities and positions which are dedicated to the execution of a specific process are grouped in the same organizational unit. Process managers are the head of this structure, and they are responsible on one hand of the performance of the process, and on the other hand of the resources performing the different activities of the process. The second option refers to matrix organization. We speak about it in a dedicated lecture describing the different types of organizational structure. When adopting a process grouping dimension, in addition to the traditional input-oriented criteria through which we build functions or output-oriented criteria through which we build divisions, we have a matrix organization. In particular, we can have a heavyweight matrix or a lightweight matrix. A heavyweight matrix combines the traditional grouping criteria, output-oriented or input-oriented, with the process-oriented grouping criterion we saw in the horizontal structure. For example, we can have an organization in which one hierarchical line is represented by the functions with functional managers, and one hierarchical line is represented by the process with process managers. The functional managers are responsible of the resources operating in the functions and of developing their competencies, while process managers are responsible of the business process performances and of ensuring that functional resources assigned to the process activities are able to carry out properly their job. Heavyweight matrix is an organizational structure that allows us to carefully monitor and supervise the process, but it could be a too rigid structure when there is the need to change the process. For example, in turbulent environments, when customer needs are not that predictable, a heavyweight organizational structure may hinder the capability of customization of the company. To solve this limit, we can have a lightweight matrix. Also, in this case, we use different grouping criteria to group traditional units, both input-output oriented and process-oriented, but the input-output oriented criteria are dominant, and on the process dimension, we don't have a real organizational unit, but we have a process owner that coordinates the resources that operate along the process. Process owner is a coordination mechanism, and in particular, an integration role, that in this case is supervising the process dimension with limited authority on the functional resources. This organizational configuration allows us to solve the problem of flexibility that we mentioned about the heavyweight matrix, but we must say that it also shows weaknesses that are related to the role of the process owner, which could be sometimes problematic because of the fact that she may have many responsibility on the process performance without having the proper formal authority to manage the resources that contribute to the activities of the process. We will talk about the process owner in a dedicated lecture about organizational principles for process management.